This next section covers editing the higher resolution HDV or high definition video signal on your Casablanca. It is important to note that the HDV signal requires a ton of processing power. That's why we came out with the new Renomé and Renomé Plus models. If you're editing HDV and you plan to do a lot of it and you're using one of the earlier models, the Prestige, the Cron, or the Cron Plus, you may want to consider taking advantage of the loyalty purchase or the upgrade trade-in programs to the Renomé or the Renomé Plus for maximum efficiency. Also, the Avio and the Claro are not capable of editing HDV with their limited processors. There are on-screen references in this next tutorial made to Smart Edit 5. Take note that the HDV editing operation in Smart Edit 6 is identical. Lastly, I will refer you back to the printed manual of Smart Edit 6 for full detailed information about editing HDV on your Casablanca. Lastly, we would like to finish this tutorial by focusing on the great capabilities that Smart Edit 5 gives us in working with the HDV footage. As we mentioned in the beginning of this tutorial video today, Smart Edit 5 is focused on working with the HDV signal, otherwise known as high definition video. This is high definition, high resolution, really crisp looking colors, beautiful images provided on a subset of camcorders available by manufacturers from range from Sony, Canon, and JVC at this point in time. All three of these camera manufacturers export this high-definition video signal out via a FireWire cable. It's the same FireWire cable you've been using previously, and it's the same FireWire port on the front or rear of the Casablanca unit you're working with. Here's how Smart Edit 5 works. First thing I want to do is I want to go to an empty project. For example, I'm in Project 5 right here, and I am personally going to choose, let's just call this HD Test. That way I know that this particular project is going to include high-definition video material. Next thing I want to do is identify and select that this is an HDV project. That sets aside this one specific project for HDV editing. Now you'll notice on the same hard drive you can have SD, standard definition, and HD projects in place on the same project. Once I've got that all set, my HDV project, I'm going to come over here to the record window. Now prior to this little demonstration, we connected up a HDV camera via FireWire with our Casablanca. Now we, as well as all the other equipment manufacturers, I recommend you do not hot swap your FireWire cables, which means you do not connect the FireWire cable while you have your Casablanca and your camera turned on at the same time. A small spike of voltage can go down the cable and damage either your Casablanca and or your video camera. So have one of those turned off when you make that connection, please. Just before we begin recording the HDV footage into your Casablanca using Smart Edit 5, it's important to ensure that your video camera is set in the VTR playback mode, and that if you have any modification capabilities in your menu settings, that you make sure you have the pure HDV signal coming out of your camera. Ideally the 1080i HDV signal. Make sure it's not set for auto or for down convert to SD, because that will affect the success of HDV. It has to be the pure HDV stream. So to begin officially here, we're going to go ahead and roll the camera in playback, and I can do it from the menu by clicking on the DV playback button. And then I'm looking at my camera viewfinder and I see that the footage begins, so I can click on the HDV recording button. Okay? Now it is actually recording the footage into the system, and you can see that by virtue of the timer going on here. You are not seeing a signal in your window. When you see a blank screen, it's okay. The pure HDV signal is so highly compressed and so sophisticated, we can only begin viewing and working with it once it's on the system. When I've recorded enough footage, I click stop, and then I can stop my deck as well. And you'll notice nothing else will change until you decide to go to any other menu in your Casablanca system. So I'm going to choose to go over here to the edit window, and you see it's doing HDV to DV conversion. What's happening is the 24 seconds of HDV footage I loaded into my Casablanca is recorded and sits on the hard drive. Smart Edit 5 is now automatically down converting, making for me automatically a standard definition version, a regular DV version of the same exact footage. Both those files will be sitting on my Casablanca. And in Smart Edit 5, I'm actually working with the SD footage, the standard definition footage, and Smart Edit 5 is essentially copying all the choices, all the edits, all the trims, all the effects onto the high definition signal, which sits essentially in the background. Now we can use the auto trim function like we've done, the auto split function rather, and I click split and it tells me it's created 3 scenes. So with my original scene it has 3 separate subsets. Okay? If you are using an HDV camera and you are down converting in the camera and bringing it to SD footage, the auto split function will not work because the camera manufacturer has essentially disabled that with the down conversion technology that they're using within the camera. But you can see right in front of you what you just saw was an auto split of the HDV footage. Now that process where Smart Edit 5 creates that SD file will take a longer period of time if you're bringing in a significant amount more footage. And depending on the Casablanca editor you're working on, the faster the processor, the faster that process will take. So again, I'm working on the Renome Plus. That procedure goes quite rapidly. That'll go much slower on, for example, an Avio. When you're working with an HDV project, it is important to have the smart rendering function turned on. And here's why. I'm going to go ahead and select a short 1-second long scene, and I'm going to go ahead and employ this fog filter. And you can see a preview. It's this nice fog effect here. It's one of the effects packages. When I click OK, you're going to see it create the original fog effect, and then it takes a little bit longer time to create an HDV copy of that same effect. Remember I said it's going to work on the SD and then the HDV. You're only seeing the standard definition file. The HDV is saved on the hard drive in the background when you finish the project. Now you see that it took a few moments. If that was a longer scene and a much more intensive effect, I would have to sit and wait for that to occur. So let's go ahead and show you. If I turn on the smart rendering function, which you're going to get by going to System Settings, Smart Rendering, and engaging the function by checking the box. Then I'm going to come over here, and with Smart Rendering affected now, I'm going to create that same effect. Only way I'm going to know is I'll see the little icon at the top right corner telling me Smart Rendering's working. I can go about my rest of my work, and it's not going to slow me down or stop my process. And when it's all done, it'll give me that clip right here in the scene bin. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple scenes to the storyboard here and build a tiny short project and point out one other item that relates to working in an HDV project. We mentioned that the format of HDV we're using is the 1080i. If you're working on a camera that delivers the 720p, there is already, I should say, development plans to include the 720p HD format. People have used it successfully in a cuts-only configuration, not successfully yet with effects and titles. The developers are working on that, and we do expect an update in the near future. But for the rest of us who are using 1080i right now, there are some effects that are not compatible with HDV. They don't conform to the 1080i and the 16:9 aspect ratio. The best place to check and see which effects are compatible with your system at this point in time is go to our website. Again, that's www.macrosystem.us. Click on Support and look for the FAQs about which effects are compatible with HDV. Maybe the easiest way to tell which effects are available to you in the HDV mode is right in front of us here, and that's right in our effects screen. The developers only give us access to those particular effects